it's Maddie from Mostly Maddie, and welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today I am setting up a reading journal, and it is a very special reading journal because it is going to be for my Read Around the World project. I am planning to read a book from every single country. I'll get into the logistics of what countries I am including, but it'll be 197 countries, and to document that journey, I'm going to set up my very first reading journal. I haven't done a bullet journal in years because I'm a perfectionist and I always really struggled with making everything look picture perfect. But I spent last year really trying to break that perfectionism and be more comfortable with making mistakes and having things not look perfect. So with all that being said, this is going to be a very exciting project for me because it's the first time I'm doing a bullet journal in years, and it's not going to be perfect. So we're just gonna roll with it and have fun with it, and I can't wait to set this up. So I'm gonna flip the camera around and get going, and I'll kind of talk through everything as I'm setting it up. My journey to get 1,000 subscribers, so you could be one of the first 1,000. And without further ado, let's get into it. So first things first, I will talk about the journal itself. This is from Archer and Olive. It is their compass notebook, and we are working in the size A5, which is my favorite size to work in a journal. I haven't done a bullet journal in years. I do think that I would have benefited maybe from a bigger journal, but we're going with the size I'm comfortable with, and it is dotted and made with vegan leather. It is really nice, and I feel like it just goes so on theme with what I'm doing for this journal. Honestly, I think this was the hardest page for me because just breaking it in and getting started was my biggest setback. I have done bullet journals in the past. I have failed at many, and so this is like a big undertaking for me just because it's been so long since I've done one, and I've never actually completed one because I always get frustrated and I end up ripping out the pages and just not moving forward with it. But after a year of working on that problem, I'm ready to take on this project. The great thing too is I pretty much worked with materials that I already owned. I didn't go out and buy a bunch of new stuff to create this, because that's another thing that I often struggle with, is feeling like I never have all the materials or things that I need to make it look the way I want to. And I finally just kind of said, screw that, I'm gonna make what I have work and have fun with it. And as always, I will be sure to link and include everything that I can that I was using, all the booklets, scrap paper, the stamps, pictures, washi tape, everything that I can find, I will be sure to link. As you can kind of start to see as the front page is coming together, I am going with a vintage, old school type of look. And I just wanted to keep the front page very simple, and the next page is where I really start to get into more scrapbook style and just really having fun with the spread and making it a little more interesting and fully covered with different materials. This was also really challenging for me because, first of all, you have to decide what countries you plan on actually including, because politically and just the way you look at what is considered a country, the number varies quite a bit. I used a website as my resource because I just needed to kind of pick a number and stick with it and have that be what I was rolling with. So I found a website with a good list, and I will link that too, to decide what countries I was actually going to include, because it can really range from anywhere to 193 countries to almost 205 or something like that. It's a pretty big variation, so I just went with a number that I felt comfortable with and that I knew would work with the space I have in this journal. This is not a new project in terms of I'm not the first person to do a Read Around the World. I will tag a creator on here who also created a Read Around the World journal. She was really the only one I could find who specifically had created a journal to go along with her reading journey. And so I owe her a lot of credit because I kind of took the lead from some of the things she did on how I wanted to kind of shape the journal itself and how I was going to structure it. So big shout out to her for kind of paving the way for me and giving me a little bit of inspiration, because I'm not gonna lie, it's really hard to go into this with no direction or not having anyone else and before you having done it, just kind of running with it and making things up as you go. The Read Around the World project itself, there are so many booktubers and book talkers who have done that. I will tag a few people who I have been following and have found some inspiration from and really have enjoyed their recommendations, their reading recaps, and all of that. I just think this is such a cool way to read diversely outside of the United States. The past year or two, I have really prided myself in reading diversely, but when I really stepped back and looked at what that meant, I meant really diversely in the United States and not necessarily with authors that lived in different countries. So this will really push me to do that, and I'm just really looking forward to it because while I would love to travel and eventually see like the entire world, I just know that that isn't going to happen. And so this is a really fun way to get a peek into places that I might never see in my lifetime. This page was probably the biggest pain in my ass. And is really the main indicator of why I don't like doing bullet journals, because you have to do so much planning with your spacing, making sure all the squares are the same size. How is it going to look on the page? How do you fill it up to make everything look even? My husband is a big numbers guy, so I actually had him help me to make sure I had enough space to create boxes for 197 squares. Because while I am accepting the fact that there might be mistakes and I might make some errors, I want things to look even and look, symmetrical. And that is obviously a huge part of doing these types of journals. So the amount of work it took on the back end to get everything I needed to get this started, it was a lot of work and it was a lot of planning that you don't see. Like, this video is condensed into 10 minutes. When I tell you I have spent like hours planning and trying to figure out how this was all gonna lay out, I'm not kidding. Like, it took me so much time. And maybe if you've been doing bullet journals for a long time, you might not struggle with this as much, but since it's been years since I've done one, it just took a lot of planning. But there it is. I feel like this will be a good motivator to fill in every single time I finish a book, and it'll give me an excuse to come in here, fill in that number, and then write about the book as soon as I finish it so that I don't slack on filling things out. Now, the fellow creator on here who I saw create a journal like this, she actually printed out maps of all of the continents and is planning to color them in. And I just didn't really like how that was looking, and my journal's also a lot smaller, so it didn't really make sense for me to do that. So I just found the countries in this old world's scrapbook paper that I have, and I like pulled each one out, and that's kind of what I'm using for the cover of each continent or country. So right now I am doing North America, as you can see. And I'm really happy with how it all is tying together. Like I said, I was really working with stuff I already owned, so I kind of just had to make what I had work. Those are all from like one pack that I bought off of Amazon, and I just used them throughout the entire book, and it made it really nice and easy. I didn't have to make a lot of decisions when I came to that, which for me, it's like the less decisions I have to make, the better and the easier it's gonna be for me to get the whole thing done. I also used this distresser stuff to kind of fill the edges of all the papers, so it gave everything that vintage look, because when I was ripping off papers and stuff, everything was like a bright white and it just didn't really look great on the paper. So I used that distresser to do all the edges, and it just gives like a nice brown, kind of looks like it burned or something, and I really like how that turned out. I think it looks really nice. I think eventually I will read either all of the regions of the United States or do one book from an author from every state, but for now I'm just doing the entire country as one, because I have 192 other countries that I need to read, and that one is kind of low on my priority list. Since I have read almost exclusively from American authors, there's no need or like no rush for me to go through and read all of those. And my plan is to try and find a book by an author who is from that country, lives in that country. That is the main goal and objective. If I can't find that, I will likely try to find a book that is written set in that country. So first it's going to be if I can find an author from that country. And then secondary, if I can't do that, it's going to be a book that takes place in that country. Ideally by somebody who has like some sort of ties to that country, but I know it'll get a little tricky, as you know, some places obviously aren't as big, don't have huge populations. They might not have as many translated books, so my options might be more limited, but we're going to try our best. I also have kind of sworn off bullet journals, but I decided to do it for this project because I think it'll be fun. It'll be a cool way to document the journey, and reading all of these books is going to take me a long time, and I do want to remember the project as a whole. So having a place where I can kind of come back to and revisit and journal and document about every book that I've read, I feel like this will be a great place for that, and I can take my time with it and not feel rushed. And then I can always come back and look at this, remember old books that I've read, remind myself of these places that I traveled to, if you will. So that is why I am doing a bullet journal, because I honestly thought I would never do one again in my life, but I'm taking a chance with this one. I think it'll be fun. The way I set this up is I decided to break it down by continent. So each continent has, however many countries, and on every page after the cover page for that continent, I have 2 books per page where I'm going to do a picture of the book, write a little summary about what I thought, the rating, any notes that I want to include. So there's going to be 4 books, per spread, if you will. It's 2 books per page. So I counted all of those out in between these cover pages. So you're not seeing that, but obviously I left enough space to include those for when the time comes when I do finish a book. I will go in there and fill them in that place. I'm not entirely sure how I plan to decorate those pages yet. They're still just blank and white right now. I'm not sure if I plan to decorate them more or if I just want to do kind of like a color-coded thing. Not totally sure, and I will think about that when the time comes. And there was a few countries I had to just decide which continent they were going to be included in, because with Asia and Europe, there is a few countries that overlap. And so when I was doing all of my counting and making sure I had the right country count and everything, I had to make sure I wasn't duplicating, because sometimes the list have them listed in both continents. So again, when I say there was a lot of work on the back end, it was just figuring all of that out, making sure I didn't duplicate, have a country listed in 2 continents, because you can see on these next pages after I do the continent cover, I write each country, and I think that'll be kind of like my table of context where I can go and write in, where I can find that specific country in the book when it's all said and done. So that's what I'm setting up right here. So obviously I needed to know the exact number of countries that were going to be included so I could write them out here. And this one took up almost the entire page. Some of them, like Oceania and Australia, there's not as many, but thankfully I made it work and they all fit without it being so crowded or uneven or anything like that. If you have any specific country book recommendations that you think are worth including on my list, please feel free to comment and give me any suggestions, because I haven't started creating the list yet of the books that I actually want to read. I think what I'm going to do is go by continent and then put them in a jar or something and pull them out and kind of decide that way on what book I'm going to read next from what country. I was thinking about doing it alphabetically, but I want there to be a little spontaneity with it. So I think pulling them out of a hat or a jar or something would be kind of fun, and just, add a little more interest into the project and keep me on my toes a little bit. So like I said, if you have any books from a certain country that you really loved, or you think it's everybody should read this book from this, country or this author or whatever, please let me know, because I'm open to suggestions, taking them all as I get my list going here. I hope you've enjoyed my little editing tricks here, because I feel like you probably didn't want to watch me color in, 20 lines. And I also did some fast forwarding. But there's Oceania. I actually couldn't find in the maps scrapbook paper that I had. I couldn't find that one. So that's why that page is a little plainer. Oh, and then at the end here, I was kind of sad. I lost some footage. My phone stopped recording because my storage was full. So you don't see me putting together some spreads here, but I mean, you get the gist as you're watching me do this. You're seeing how they're all kind of coming together. Once I got going, it was not nearly as stressful as I thought it was going to be, because I've said a few times, I was just really nervous about doing this style, but I'm really excited. Thanks for following along, and we will talk soon. Bye.